In 3, 2, 1, we are back.
No, I think they're better on, by the way. But yeah, go on.
Welcome to the
much better.
Pod. How you been doing?
Excellent.
I like
Excellent
to hear
news.
it. I like to hear it. So
Yeah.
listen, today we want to talk about what we consider our favorite film. In fact, we used to watch it for a period of time every night before we went out, just to hype us up because we liked it that much.
An adrenaline rush.
Sure. That film is, thank you for that. That film is Training Day.
Yeah.
Now, Training Day, as you know, is a great film. A lot of people love it. It's considered a classic, a modern day classic. I mean, Denzel's performance outstanding, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. In fact,
Not even remotely, by the way.
we think Training Day is the amazing movie it is for very different reasons.
Exactly.
Why don't you give them one of the reasons, and we'll go through these later.
One of the reasons which I think has been overlooked massively is that despite Denzel's Oscar-winning turn as corrupt cop
Yeah.
Alonzo Harris
Yeah.
in this film, okay,
Yeah.
for which he received deserved plaudits, the
Can
great
you
performance,
just tell
the
them?
great performance is that of Ethan Hawke in the
Ethan
supporting
Hawke,
role.
Exactly. Ethan
Alright.
Hawke is the real standout performance.
Yeah.
Not so much Denzel. It's Ethan Hawke
Yeah.
that makes Denzel so
Correct.
great. Don't
That's
get me
exactly
wrong.
right.
Denzel does a great job.
That's
but it's
right.
really
Exactly.
Ethan Hawke who's somewhat underrated in his performance of the film. Okay, that's one reason.
That's one reason.
Another reason is that it has 5 scenes, right?
Yeah.
Which are the best scenes in the history of cinema.
I mean, I think they could stand alone as 5 of the best scenes, and they happen to all be in the same film.
Okay.
Which
And-
is a powerful statement.
very powerful.
Yeah.
You're powerful.
Yeah.
And finally, I mean, I kind of brushed Denzel under the carpet.
Yes.
But the truth is, his performance is amazing, but it's because of his ambiguity.
Correct.
As far as
Yes,
I see
yes,
it.
yes,
All right.
yes,
So are you
correct.
ready to talk about this?
I'm ready, baby.
Let's talk about
I'm ready,
this.
baby.
Now I know you're a big Ethan Hawke fan.
I am a big Ethan Hawke
What's
fan.
your favorite movie apart from Training Day that Ethan Hawke has been in?
Great Expectations, which I dearly love, by
Do
the
you
way.
really?
I love that film.
Jesus.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever watched it.
A great modern day adaptation of a classic tale, Dickensian.
Okay, very good.
It's actually, you know what, when I think of it's a romantic masterpiece.
Okay, fine.
Reality Bites, I love.
Okay.
Gattaca. I love. You like Gattaca?
I love
Okay,
Gattaca. I
fine.
love Gattaca. Also, the Sunrise series, the Sunset
Yeah,
Sunrise
yeah.
series. The
Before
first
Sunset-
one,
yes, yeah.
the first one is
With
probably
Judy Delpy.
Yeah, although she's a bit annoying, but he's very good in it. And Boy is a classic. And you know, in a lot of ways, Ethan Hawke, who's somewhat of a reluctant movie star,
Yeah, I would say so.
is a great movie star.
I would say so. And by the way, also, when he came to prominence in one of the great films of all time, Dead Poet Society.
That's true.
And in that kind of
Which I
climactic
don't like at
scene,
all.
do you not like it?
No,
I
I'm
love
not
Dead
into
Poet
it.
Society. The climactic scene when
Silly.
he's the one who kind of orchestrates standing on the desk. Oh,
I
Captain,
mean-
my Captain.
Oh, the standing on the
Okay.
desks, God forbid.
What is
All
the
right.
great iconic
Okay,
scene
fine,
of all
fine,
time?
fine.
Come
Anyway,
on, I mean,
let's talk
you
about
know.
Training
Yeah,
Day.
we talk about Training
Why
Day.
is he so amazing?
Okay, first of all,
And why is he the
this
standout?
is a great, personification of an uncomfortable, conflicted, rookie cop.
Yeah.
Out on a Training Day patrol alongside a seasoned, combat hardened, kind of like,
Detective.
alpha male
Yeah.
lieutenant. Okay,
Lieutenant, sorry.
right, and Ethan Hawke's performance, channeling this kind of sullenness, shyness,
Naivete.
ambivalence,
Yes.
but yet and kind of like what's it called, this incredible conflict of emotions as he's taken through the motions by Alonzo Harris, played by Denzel Washington, through a series of like amazing set pieces
And jiggery pokery.
Right. Okay. And the complexity of his performance, the expression, the tics, the idiosyncrasies, they are so exceptionally well captured, but actually overlooked because
because of Denzel's larger than life
and his kind of
performance.
bombastic performance, right?
Yeah.
And I actually liken it a little bit to, just as an example, something like Rain Man,
Right.
where you had Dustin Hoffman in a very, very kind of obvious Oscar turn,
Right.
and Tom Cruise in the supporting role, playing in some respects the more challenging role as the guy who has to go through more change throughout the film, right? To come out on the other side, but because Dustin's performance in Rain Man is so I don't know what you want to say, flagrant or blatant or obvious.
Sure, yeah.
The supporting kind of performance goes more unnoticed, and I feel that way very much with Ethan Hawke's performance. But I think it is a masterclass in acting subtlety. And by the way, he was Oscar nominated in the supporting role, but nobody remembers that. Okay, and
I certainly didn't.
Yeah, and when people remember Training Day as affectionately as we do, and so on. The all eyes are on the Denzel performance because it's so big and so grandiose and so powerful and so fun, right? But actually, one thing to remember is that Denzel's performance, what you always say, the yin to the yang, Denzel's performance is as good as it is because the guy on patrol with him throughout the course of the film, he has to be as good as his Robin
100%.
to Alonzo Harris's Batman.
Yeah, well, 100%.
Right?
100%.
Okay. All right.
No, but also, you know, the thing is, and this is the great thing about
Yeah.
Ethan Hawke. I mean, when you look at him, when you see him, he plays a kind of a soft type character.
Yeah.
So initially, to cast him in this role,
Yeah.
which he needs to be soft, but he also needs to be a cop and a tough cop.
Exactly
at that.
right. Exactly right.
I mean, and he's convincing.
He's very
like
convincing.
if you had told me beforehand there's going to be this film and he's going to play the role, I'd say no way.
Yeah.
But he is quite convincing in this, and you're right. He does, like, without Ethan Hawke, there's no what's the name of the character? Sorry,
Jake Hoyt.
but without Hoyt, there's no Harris.
No.
Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? And actually, you know, it's, and we'll get to it, but it is because, you know, Hoyt doesn't come across as this like tough guy that
No.
Harris thinks he can get away with the things he does.
Exactly right. And incidentally, I mean, the movie doesn't work if you have two guys shouting at the top of their
No,
lungs,
true.
right? But
But you look at Harris's other teammates or like partners within the squad.
Right.
They're not like Hoyt at all.
No.
They're all tough, hardened.
they are, although
streetwise cops.
Although I have to say, and I don't want to conflate point one with point two, because obviously
Yes.
point two is where we're going to talk about some of the scenes. Okay, but actually, what I love is that actually Hoyt is actually a badass. And he demonstrates that in
Sure.
scenes. In particular, you know, the scene with Paul, which is played by Dr. Dre.
Yes.
And that's kind
Great
of
actor.
like one of the
greatest
one of the
performances.
greatest performances
of
absolutely,
our age.
absolutely. You get out of my way, sucker.
So
okay,
good.
so
Up there with Gal Gadot.
yes, exactly right.
No, Kal-El. Don't do it.
Okay. When he decks Dre in the face, right,
Yeah.
in one of the pivotal scenes, and the scenes actually where he not assaults, but he
Pushes.
no, when he kind of like tracks down those two guys who are trying to rape that young girl, the teenager,
yes.
right? I think he shows his kind of street smarts and his toughness in a subtle kind of way.
Yes.
Obviously, by the end of the film, a bit like what's it called, Michael Corleone character.
You're right.
In the end,
Very
he's
much
been
so.
he's been
Very much
so
so. That's a good
He's
comparison.
been so combat hardened by
Yes.
this Training Day,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That he emerges on the other side as essentially the most tough of alpha males. And you know what would be great? I was thinking about this the other day. It would be actually a very good TV series, a 10-part TV series, if they commissioned Jake Hoyt post-Training Day and what becomes of him.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that.
Okay.
Because in a sense, I mean, Hoyt obviously goes down a different road, but I would suspect, and I think this is in, actually, if you watch the kind of director's cut, and you know, when they talk about the
Remember his
behind the
name?
scene, yes, it's Antoine Fuqua.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, they talk about how Harris was once upon a time Hoyt.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So maybe about Hoyt, you know, and it's just like, it's about those, you know, as a great man once said, inches. It's like he went an inch too far. He's like, you know, if I go a bit this way, then I can put the guy away. And soon enough, before you know it, you become the criminal.
Same is true in life, right?
Same is true in life.
Exactly. I agree. When the
Like what happened to us, basically.
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's right. But yeah, so I think it's true. I mean, you know, and that fine line.
We started doing it on YouTube unsuccessfully.
That's right. That's right.
Same as being a drug dealer.
But it's all going to change from here on. Okay. So, but I agree that kind of line that policemen in real life probably are tempted to cross on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Okay, and many do, and hence the role of internal affairs divisions and so on. Okay, this is actually kind of I wouldn't say a deep dive, but it's a tease about that kind of profession and that kind of lifestyle. And exactly right, like one of the great things, we'll talk about it in subsequently in our episode, but it's about the ambiguity of kind of law and order and crime and punishment, and
life and death.
the melting pot, as it were, between these two worlds. But anyways,
so
but
anything else to add? I think we should move on to the next one.
So the key scenes, which
now we're talking about the 5 greatest scenes in history.
In the history, potentially.
Cinema.
Or certainly the 20th century.
Okay, fine.
Which has spanned 25 years, right? Okay,
yes.
That's still like a pretty
not
wide
21st century.
21st century.
Yes.
Yes, I did say that?
You said 20th.
20th century.
Maybe you didn't.
Okay.
Anyway,
all right.
rewind.
Fine. The first scene is the diner scene.
Fine.
Okay. Now I ask you, what do you remember that diner scene? Because I know you love that scene so much. The kind of
the dialogue is amazing. It's quick. It's sharp. You're very disorientated. I am as to what exactly is happening.
Yeah.
But so much is happening.
So much is happening.
And so much is being said, and there's so much information. Why?
Because essentially, like, Ethan Hawke has come to meet Denzel for his training day.
Yes.
Meets him in a diner.
Yes.
Okay, and it's like a hard-nosed, tough interview process. Okay. And again, we talk about Ethan Hawke's exceptional acting performance against Denzel's more like kind of explosive embodiment of his character, where he's kind of ignoring him, reading his newspaper, and Hawke is so uncertain about how to kind of broach him. Like, he's trying to talk to him and he's ignoring him, and he says to him, "Tell me a story." And he's like, I don't know. He's so unsure of himself. But it feels so much like real life, where there would be this hard taskmaster who's challenging you to kind of man up and impress him, right? And it's handled so expertly. And then he hits him with the line. He's like, "This is a newspaper. It's 90% bullshit, okay? That's why I read it, because it entertains me. You won't let me read it, so now you impress me with your bullshit." And then he tells him the story about this DUI, right? And how the conclusion of that story is that they prevented a murder, and Alonzo Harris feigns being impressed, and in the end, sarcastic is like, "That's the best story you got. You were out with a female, like superior officer, and that's the best story." And then he asks her about the liquor license. Am I allowed to? Do you want to tell people what the liquor license is?
Well, I think they can figure it out for themselves.
Fine. It's a great kind of like feeling out.
Introductory,
feeling out of this like alpha male character and this beta male character. Okay, and again, great acting performances by both participants. Okay, great scene. Okay, second scene, the original. There's a scene where they go out and he makes them smoke the kind of, is that a crack pipe?
Yes, it's sort of what is it? It's like angel dust.
It's angel dust, but initially
it's weed laced with angel dust.
And which is actually, it's some foreshadowing there, because they go on an arrest.
Yes.
And he's actually setting him up for something
thing.
later.
Yeah.
But initially he tells him it's marijuana, and Ethan Hawke is very reluctant to smoke it. Another amazing scene of like nervousness, and he doesn't know if he's being tested. This guy is supposed to bring him into his unit, okay, make his career. He's challenging him. Is it a test? I don't know. And in the end, he sort of like coerces him, okay, and in fact it's PCP, and he is like kind of wiped out, okay. And Alonzo presents this experiment to him as necessary, because if you're going to go deep undercover with drug dealers, you better know how to like take drugs, and because otherwise,
and stay level-headed.
Exactly, because otherwise you're going to get blown away. You're going to get exposed yourself as an undercover cop, right? Great scene, okay. But that's not the second most pivotal scene. The second most pivotal scene is when they go and visit the Scott Glenn character, Roger, who's basically an ex-cop turned drug dealer, but is an informant, and they're in this like dingy kind of like
apartment.
Yeah, curtained, like it's like all curtained, right? And he's in this bathroom, and
Bosnich style.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And they're talking about
in the days with your ex.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Alright, cool.
Yeah. They're talking about. Well, you remember the great line? What did we used to do? Back to the world, dog.
Indeed.
Come on, man. Get on there.
Go on.
They're talking about like war stories, right? They're sharing war stories, and they're talking about like life in the trenches, right? And
what
Hawke,
makes it a world-class scene?
the scene where he kicks the snail off his porch, and the snail comes back after like a year, and he's like, "What the hell are you looking at?" If you haven't seen it, check it out on YouTube, okay?
All right.
Okay. It's a great scene. It's a great setup scene, okay? And then okay. Now, scene number.
Just can I pause you there?
Scene number 3.
These 5 classic scenes in the history of cinema were his idea. I'm just saying because now that you're telling me them, I'm not 100% convinced.
Scene number 3. Okay.
But let's see.
This is the double scene. Okay, Alonzo taking Hoyt into his community. Okay, and where he kind of pre-warns him, like, "Don't ever come here without me."
Fine.
You remember that?
Yes.
And then a key scene because of like the film's conclusion, which will come back to haunt Alonzo and actually save Jake, but he's coming in there basically a very, very kind of like exclusively kind of like black community, and Hoyt is this like white guy, and you're introduced and you kind of get a glimpse into this kind of subculture of cops and criminals, and I want to say, like, how would you describe them? Kind of hoodlums
just like lower class
and
working class
community members, but people who have a code of honor. In fact,
Sure.
And
it's
then
usually the poor that do have a code of honor.
Absolutely,
it's the rich that don't.
Yeah, and the
like you.
and that's me before, not now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now you have code.
Yeah, now I have a code of honor. And Alonzo's coming, by the way.
Go on.
And that scene is followed up very quickly with the scene where they meet the 3 wise men. Now, I know you love the 3 wise men. Why don't you tell me who the 3 wise men are?
Well, the 3 wise men are like, the kind of heads of the police department.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Who kind of make or break people's careers.
Yeah.
They're ultra corrupt themselves. They've got used to the good life, probably like skimming off the top, doing what they want. And of course they have a lot of power and they've become very power hungry. Now, to get anything done in the city of LA, you need to go see the 3 wise men.
Yeah, to get like fake illegal search warrants and the like. And a great scene where you first realize Alonzo's own unease. When he's sitting there and they're kind of like, they're telling him off, and you see the nervousness in his performance, when they tell him like, "Go F yourself," and he's like, he kind of is sitting a little bit uncomfortably in his chair. You feel that there is someone above Alonzo in the police food chain.
Yes.
And in fact that you realize how far up police corruption goes, right?
Great.
And it's kind of probably a microcosm for what happens in real life.
Yes.
Okay, and one of the scenes I particularly like is that sort of story and anecdote that the Harris Yulin character delivers about.
You haven't said this already, have you?
I haven't.
You checked, did you?
I haven't.
So I can still make my joke.
You can still make your joke. What was Harris Yulin's name in Scarface?
Bernstein.
Yeah. You can still make your joke, all right? Where they're a great anecdote, very like faithfully told, very realistic about how this hardened criminal has escaped conviction by fooling the judge that he was insane,
crazy,
by putting peanut butter down his butt cheeks, and in the middle of like his sentencing, he puts his hand down his pants,
exactly,
wipes his fingers, and then licks them off, and the judge basically gets duped. And basically says, "I can't convict this man, he's insane." And they send him to the puzzle factory.
What they should have done is give him a one-way ticket to the resurrection.
Very good. You know what a hassa is,
If you know, you know. All right, go on.
He wanted to go to London, by the way. He wanted Tony Montana to arrange him 2 first-class tickets, him and the wife.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you remember?
That's true.
In 1982, I wonder what that would have cost him, by the way. Anyways, that's a great scene, and like Alonzo starts feeling, and they start like kind of intimidating and like kind of,
you were supposed
like,
to give us 5 scenes. Now you're telling us the whole movie.
All right, I'm just okay. No. There's two more.
Then
Then there's the smiley scene. No, sorry. Then there's the Roger scene, right? when Roger is eventually killed, and that's the kind of the grand reveal scene.
Yes.
Okay. Now I know you have like strong feelings about this scene. Why don't you tell us about that scene when they visit Roger again? What happens?
Okay. Well, obviously he's there to fulfill another task, which is to get the money. Now that he's paid the 3 wise men, he now has to pay the Russians off. Anyway, you all know the story, all right? So he needs more money.
Yes.
And he knows that his old buddy,
because he had an
Roger,
expensive weekend in Vegas, where he killed a Russian. Yes.
His own buddy Roger,
yes,
who is also similar to him, like an older version of him,
correct,
like a corrupt cop. We don't exactly know, he's like part-time drug dealer, part-time, police officer,
philosopher.
Sure. Anyway, he's there to take the money, and then it's a very interesting scene insofar as we know that Harris has no loyalty to anyone.
Well, not at that point. You don't yet know.
Fine, I know, but it's building up to that. But like the end of it, we know, and he convinces Hoyt that this guy's a bad guy. He shoots Roger, and like I love the scene where he's like, I love the part where he's like, breathe.
Oh God, amazing.
Do you know what I mean?
Breathe, dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's finished.
Like sort of like laughing at him. Like it just shows how evil and callous Harris is, and. But still, we're not quite sure.
We're not quite sure.
Side of the line Harris falls on.
But the reason that scene is so good is because, again, you're basically, the audience is viewing everything through the Ethan Hawke lens, still uncertain about the true morality of Harris and his crew.
And this goes to our last point, is about, I know we'll get to it.
Yeah.
It's about the ambiguity that is constant with regard to Denzel Washington's character.
Yes.
It's not something that grows.
No.
It's there from the start. And it remains to the very end. We still don't really know who this guy is and what he's done and whether he's good or evil.
Yeah, because he's a Machiavellian character, right? Do the end justify the means? Is this a necessary part of the job? Is he basically protecting the greater good, and in so doing he has to get rid of like vermin on the streets, the kind of like the lower level, the scum, as he puts it, right? And actually in that scene, which like where he's trying to kind of gently tease and coerce Ethan Hawke into like blowing him away, and Ethan Hawke is convinced that he's joking, and in fact he's not, and he then takes the gun himself, turns around and blows him away with like a pump action shotgun. It's such a shocking scene. And again, talk about Ethan Hawke's incredible acting prowess, the reaction, the shock, the disillusionment with these guys, these like seasoned police officers. And then Alonzo afterwards telling him, look, this guy was a drug dealer, he was selling dope to kids, the world is a better place without him. And he's like, no, this was murder and armed robbery. And you're actually convinced then by this.
That's when Harris knows that he's going to get rid of this guy.
Well, that's exactly right. But you don't know that yet.
No.
And you're still convinced that Harris might be
right.
Like, yes, that his philosophies are kind of in keeping with the way society. Then the next scene is like, for me, the most haunting, scary scene, one of the most scary scenes in the history of cinema, which is the scene with the kind of the Mexican, kind of like low-level Mexican cartel, when he takes him to visit these guys under the guise
Smiley and the boys.
Amazing, Cliff Curtis, what a great actor he is. Under the guise of giving them gifts for their children and their wives, like a microwave and a VCR.
When he walks into that house, that's a great,
it's just
great
so good.
shot.
It's so good.
Like into the lions, then you go.
And these 3 guys with like tatted up and
jacked up, tatted
and then
up.
Playing poker with him while he thinks that Alonzo's kind of gone to like do some business. Hector. And then they start telling him about like the tension is palpable and it's building up, and they start revealing to Jake that Alonzo, he's a bad mother, man.
Yeah.
And they're telling him about what happened in Vegas with the Russians, and Jake is starting to understand.
One of the scenes
it's
where
scary.
we learn more about Alonzo Harris, and he's like crazy, man.
Yeah.
Like he's
a crazy vato. Yes, I like that. I like that. Right? So you realize what a gangster he is. He's such a gangster. And then obviously Hoyt realizes that he's been left to basically they're going to assassinate him. And there's that small tussle. They take him, like they drag him across like the apartment floor into the bathtub. They put a shotgun in his mouth. It's like such a scary scene. And then again, by fortuitous happenstance, plot.
Yes.
They discover that something that happened earlier in the day.
Great writing.
Yeah, great writing. When he saved this like young teenager from getting raped by these 2 vatos, right? Like, he kept her wallet, and before like Smiley's about to blow him away, they say check his get his money, and they get his money, and he sees like his niece. It ends up being his niece. He's like, how'd you get this? He's like, I saved that girl from getting. That is an amazing acting performance. That is just like the fear and the desperation and but like having to keep it together. I mean, it's just an amazing. I mean, Ethan Hawke, you're a master of your craft, right? Amazing. And then
come join us.
Come join us.
On the Pon Pod.
Speaks French, by the way, fluently.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
Hawke, please, and subscribe to our channel. Okay. I know you'd love it. Anyway, he'll probably be on here before you know it.
Yes, he will be. That saves his hide, and then obviously it brings us to the final scene in the movie, which is the denouement. I know you love that, and that's a good French word that you should learn. Where like Hoyt has now been, he's like battle hardened now. Like, he's become an alpha. He's survived this crazy day of like.
But that last scene is a great scene only because of Washington's monologue.
The monologue, the crazy monologue.
I mean, that monologue that has become almost so like derived that it's almost hard to watch now. It's so cliched. But it's still a great performance. I wouldn't say that's a great scene anymore. I mean, it was a standout scene when you watch it for the first time. And in fact,
it's a bit of a scent of a woman.
Exactly.
It's a bit of a
hoo-wah.
It's become a hoo-wah.
It is, hasn't it?
It is, but I mean, when you watch it for the first time, they become parodied and
they become hoo-wahs.
Mimicked and
the hoo-wah effect, as they're called.
But it is. But why that scene is so good is not so much for Washington's like bombastic like soliloquy, where he's talking about like how he owns the town, but it's how like this showdown happens in the community that he thinks he has on lockdown, that worship him. And I love it, the way they kind of like, when they're witnessing these two guys, these two alphas, mano a mano, and they're telling Alonzo, you ain't getting a free pass from us. And they put one of those guys, he puts the gun on the street. He's like, you got to put your own work in, dog, right? And
but why don't they kill him?
No, because I think that they
know he's a dead man.
Yeah, and I think that they're men of honor. There's a code there.
Yeah.
And what I love is that in the end, like, Hoyt basically takes his badge. You don't deserve this. So he's been enlightened from this. He's like, he's not going to go down the kind of the Emperor and the Emperor Skywalker, like what the Emperor tried to do with Skywalker, right? He's like he has salvaged himself, like Luke did, but which Vader did succumb to, right? It's like that kind of like biblical prophecy.
Sure.
And obviously at the end, by the way, one thing that we
worship at the Church of Lucas.
Yes, I do. Yes. Frank Lucas, played by Denzel in American Gangster.
Okay.
But that, and I was thinking, I know we've spoken about that before. If they had done like kind of 10-part miniseries thereafter about what becomes of Jake Hoyt, because if you think about it, after this crazy training day, he's a made man. If you think about what he's accomplished, Smiley and the Mexicans.
Hold on,
think about it.
Yes, sure.
He's like running the streets.
But you can also go down a different way.
Good.
You can go down a different way that, like, the three wise men are maybe a bit wise to what's happened, and they want to keep him down because he might give the game away.
Do you know there's a deleted scene,
right?
Which it's the last scene when one of the three wise men, or three of them, turn up at Hoyt's house because they know that
he knows that they know.
He takes the bag at the end with the money.
Yes.
And they actually go and see him.
Yeah.
And he basically like ignores them and walks into his house. And that's the concluding scene, and they deleted it, okay? Which isn't, I mean, Fuqua must have, the idea being that like it's a bit unresolved about how what Hoyt will decide to do. Yes, but you were talking about the ambiguity of the Denzel character. I know you love that so much.
No, I'm just saying, like, from the very get-go of this character, it's such a, like, well-written, complicated, sort of like a three-dimensional person that they've created. I mean, it's like, again, we go back to the writing. I mean, the character development of him alone is incredible. I mean, and partly you've got to put that down to Denzel, but from the get-go, when he walks into shot, he's a cop, right?
Yeah.
He's a cop. He represents good.
Yes.
He's dressed in all black, leather, jewelry. He speaks in a way that's unbecoming of a police officer. He speaks like a gangster. So throughout the film, even from the very first second, and look at the car he drives, by the way. Look at the car he drives.
The Monte Carlo.
Yeah. And look at all the things he likes. The finest liquor, the jewelry, the best, the coolest.
Boom!
cars,
Go get yourself a baseball stake.
Mistresses, this and
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he
yeah,
lives
yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
gangster.
Yeah.
But he's supposed to be a cop, so
Yeah.
we don't know. We
Yeah.
don't know throughout the film. Even at the like last second when he gets torn apart by bullets. Like, was he good? Was he bad?
What a takedown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? We
Yeah.
still don't know. Like, the question marks are still there, and I think that's what makes it so great as well. I mean, you can't deny that Denzel's, and as you've previously said, once he played that character, everything for him changed.
Yeah. So by the way, initially considered for the roles of Denzel and Hawke were Samuel L. Jackson and Matt Damon.
Wow.
Same film with those guys, or no? A different film, as good a film, a worse film?
Different film. I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Samuel L. Jackson doesn't have the same weight,
the same toughness.
Yeah.
The same
although
gravitas.
he's scary too. He could probably pull it off.
He doesn't have the same sex appeal playing Alonzo
That's
Harris, I think,
true.
right? He's not
That's true.
but it's, you're saying about Denzel, it's true, after this performance, everything thereafter became an Alonzo Harris derivative. A bit like Jack Nicholson with, I don't know, The Shining.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
His role in the Equalizer
Yeah,
series.
because if it works,
Man on Fire.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But
basically, it's that sort of thinking.
And we love Denzel. Denzel's his trademark kind of signature manner of speaking, his idiosyncrasies are very iconic. But they all actually are born in that film. And it's a fantastic performance. And there is talk, by the way, I've checked the production notes, of a sequel. By the way, there was a reboot.
I don't know how.
I don't know, but listen,
What are you gonna do? You can't tell a continuation of that story. You can't.
No, but I mean, I think
maybe a different story.
I think chronicling Jake Hoyt's ascent and what becomes of him would be a very interesting story, because I really do find it fascinating. What path would Jake Hoyt take?
I think he'd be behind a desk somewhere.
No way. You mean you think he's been traumatized with this experience? I actually think, what I love about it so much, it's Michael Corleone it's exactly the same kind of thing. At the beginning of Godfather, he's again, this kind of
Maybe.
this innocent guy, wet behind the ears,
Yeah.
and by the end he's running the crime family. And Hoyt at the beginning is this rookie cop from Valley Patrol, and by the end of it, he's basically he's got the Mexicans they're copacetic with him, right? He's got the entire kind of South Central community down with him. Okay, the three wise men probably will now be
Scared of him.
Yeah, scared of him, right? And he's battle hardened from what he's had to go through. And by the way, interesting. How would
So
he
that's your premise for Training Day 2?
Yeah, I think so.
He becomes the main gangster.
Yeah, I think maybe he does, right?
bad.
And the Dr.
Bit of a
Dre.
Walter White type scenario.
Exactly. By the way, it's very similar to a bit similar to Breaking Bad.
Mr. Fuqua, Mr. Hawke, Mr. Washington, he's got the idea for you. Training Day 2.
Exactly. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Anyway, what do you guys think of his, sequel to Training Day and what it should be? Maybe you guys have different ideas. Let us know. Subscribe as always. We love ya. We out.
We out.